The silent approach. The vastness of space stretched endlessly before the United Earth Navy fleet as they approached the Kepler system. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship UN Defiance, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she studied the tactical display. 3 weeks had passed since the last transmission from the Kepler mining colonies, and the silence that followed chilled her to the bone. "Admiral, we're picking up multiple heat signatures in the asteroid belt," reported Captain James Torres from his position at the command console. His voice carried the tension that everyone on the bridge felt. Torres had served under Chen for 8 years, and she could read the concern in his dark eyes. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the fleet's chief science officer, looked up from her sensor array with a troubled expression. "The energy readings are unlike anything in our database. The signatures are organic in nature, but the power output suggests advanced technology." Chen nodded grimly. The Kepler system housed nearly 500,000 human colonists across 3 mining platforms. These weren't military installations but civilian operations focused on extracting rare minerals from the asteroid fields. Families lived there. Children played in the pressurized habitats while their parents worked the mines. The thought of what might have happened to them made her jaw clench. "Range to the outer colonies?" she asked. 14 hours at current speed," Torres replied. "Take us to silent running. I want to know what we're dealing with before we announce our presence." The fleet of 12 ships reduced their engine signatures and activated stealth protocols. Chen had brought a mixed force: 4 destroyers, 6 frigates, and 2 support vessels. It wasn't a massive fleet by military standards, but it represented some of Earth's finest crews and most advanced technology. As they crept closer to the system's inner planets, the truth began to reveal itself through long-range sensors. Dr. Vasquez's face went pale as she processed the incoming data. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive structures around Kepler 4 bits. They appear to be harvesting operations." "Show me," Chen ordered. The main display shifted to show a magnified view of the planet. What they saw made the entire bridge fall silent. Enormous biomechanical structures had been attached to the planet's surface like parasites. These alien constructs were systematically strip mining the world, consuming everything in their path. Worse still, energy readings indicated the presence of human life signs, concentrated in what appeared to be containment facilities. "My God," Torres whispered. "They're using our people as slave labor." Chen's hands tightened into fists. In her 30 years of military service, she had seen many horrors, but the systematic enslavement of human beings pushed her beyond mere anger into a cold, calculating fury. "Dr. Vasquez, what can you tell me about these aliens?" The science officer worked frantically at her console. "Based on the technology signatures and biomechanical nature of their constructs, I believe we're looking at the Krex Empire. Intelligence reports have mentioned them in communications from Outer Rim colonies, but this is our first direct encounter." Chen had read those reports. The Krex were described as a parasitic species that consumed entire worlds, enslaving the populations they conquered to fuel their expansion. They had reportedly conquered over 40 star systems, and no species had ever successfully resisted them. Their strategy was simple but effective: overwhelming numbers combined with biotechnology that could adapt to any environment. "How many ships are we looking at?" Chen asked. Torres worked his sensors, his expression growing more troubled by the minute. "Admiral, I'm counting at least 120 vessels of various sizes. Their largest ships are nearly twice the size of our destroyers." The numbers were devastating. Chen's small fleet was outnumbered 10-1 by an enemy that had never lost a battle. Any conventional military strategist would recommend immediate withdrawal and a call for massive reinforcements. But Chen also knew that by the time reinforcements arrived, every human in the Kepler system would be dead or worse. She studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. The Krex fleet was spread throughout the system, focused on their harvesting operations rather than defense. They clearly didn't consider the possibility of resistance. That arrogance might be their weakness. "Captain Torres, I need you to gather the other ship commanders for an emergency briefing. Dr. Vasquez, prepare a complete analysis of Krek's technology and tactics based on everything we can observe. Admiral, Torrid said carefully, surely you're not considering engaging them directly. The odds are impossible. Chen turned to face her captain, and he saw something in her eyes that made him step back. It wasn't recklessness or desperation. It was the cold determination of someone who had made a decision that went beyond military strategy. Captain, there are 500,000 human beings in this system counting on us. They don't know we're here, but they're hoping someone will come. I won't abandon them to slavery and death, because the odds aren't in our favor. Within an hour, the commanders of all 12 ships had gathered via secure holographic conference aboard the Defiance. Captain Rebecca Martins of the destroyer UEN Hammer, Commander David Park of the frigate UEN Raptor, and the other officers listened as Chen outlined the situation. The enemy outnumbers us significantly, she began, but they have weaknesses we can exploit. They're spread thin across multiple operations, their command structure appears centralized, and they've never faced human tactical doctrine. Captain Martinez shook her head. With respect, Admiral, human tactical doctrine has never faced anything like this either. These Kreks have conquered dozens of species. What makes us different? Chen smiled grimly. Because we're not fighting by their rules. She activated the tactical display, showing the Krek's fleet positions. Every species the Kreks have conquered has tried to meet them in direct combat. Ship-to-ship battles where superior numbers win the day. But humans have something the Kreks have never encountered. We're adaptable. Dr. Vasquez added her analysis. The Krek's biotechnology is impressive, but it follows predictable patterns. Their ships are grown rather than built, which means they share common vulnerabilities. More importantly, their communication system appears to be telepathic in nature, operating on specific frequencies. Chen nodded, which means if we can disrupt their communications, we can turn their numbers against them. Confused fleets become individual ships, and individual ships can be defeated. Commander Park leaned forward. What are you proposing, Admiral? We're going to use the asteroid field against them. The Kepler system's belt is dense with metallic asteroids that will interfere with their sensors. We'll use hit-and-run tactics, communication jamming, and psychological warfare to make them think they're facing a much larger force. The officers exchanged glances. It was an audacious plan that relied on human cunning rather than firepower. Captain Martinez was the first to speak. It's insane enough that it might actually work. The Kreks expect conventional resistance. They won't know how to respond to guerrilla tactics. Chen stood and looked at each commander in turn. I'm not going to lie to you. This mission has a high probability of failure. Some of us won't make it home. But if we succeed, we'll save 500,000 lives and send a message to the galaxy that humanity isn't prey. One by one, each commander nodded their agreement. These weren't fresh recruits or glory seekers. They were experienced officers who understood both the risks and the necessity of what they were about to attempt. Very well, Chen said. We implement the Vanguard protocol in 6 hours. Use that time to prepare your crews and say whatever prayers you believe in. When we engage the Kreks, there will be no retreat and no surrender. We win or we die trying. As the conference ended and the commanders returned to their ships, Chen remained on the bridge staring at the tactical display. Torres approached her quietly. Admiral, do you really think we can pull this off? Chen didn't answer immediately. She thought about the families trapped in those containment facilities, about children who might never see Earth again if her fleet failed. She thought about humanity's place in a galaxy that seemed filled with predators. James, she finally said, the Kreks have conquered 40 star systems because no one has ever shown them that being the biggest and strongest doesn't always mean you win. Today, they're going to learn that humans don't fight fair. And we don't give up. The preparation began immediately. Each ship received specific assignments based on their capabilities and position. The destroyers would serve as heavy hitters, using the asteroid field for cover while striking at Krek's command vessels. The frigates would focus on rescue operations, extracting human prisoners from the containment facilities. The support vessels would coordinate communication jamming and provide tactical support. Dr. Vasquez worked with the fleet's engineers to modify their sensor arrays and weapon systems. If her analysis was correct, specific electromagnetic frequencies could disrupt Krek's biotechnology. It was theoretical, but it was their best hope of leveling the playing field. As the 6-hour preparation window closed, Admiral Chen took one last look at the tactical situation. The Krek's fleet continued their harvesting operations, completely unaware that 12 human ships lurked in the darkness beyond their sensors. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. She broadcast on the fleet frequency. Today we fight not just for the people of Kepler, but for the future of humanity among the stars. The enemy expects us to be weak, to run, to beg for mercy. Instead, we're going to show them what humans do when our backs are against the wall. All ships, engage. The Vanguard Protocol was now in motion, and the Krek's Empire was about to discover that humanity played by very different rules. The human response. The first strike came like lightning from the darkness of space. The UN Hammer, commanded by Captain Rebecca Martinez, emerged from behind a massive asteroid and launched a full spread of quantum torpedoes at the nearest Krek's harvesting vessel. The alien ship, a grotesque fusion of organic tissue and metallic components, never saw the attack coming. The explosion lit up the asteroid field as the Krek's vessel ruptured, spilling its biomechanical innards into the void. But this wasn't just an attack. It was a carefully orchestrated signal that began humanity's most audacious military operation. Admiral Chen watched from the Defiance as her battle plan unfolded. Dr. Vasquez, initiate communication jamming on all Krek's frequencies. Jamming active, Admiral. Their telepathic network is being disrupted across a 50-kilometer radius. The effect was immediate and devastating. Krek's ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly began operating independently. Their hive mind advantage, which had allowed them to coordinate massive fleets with perfect precision, became a liability as ships lost contact with their command structure. Captain Torres monitored the enemy response from his tactical station. Admiral, the Krek's are trying to regroup, but they're moving in random patterns. Some ships are heading directly toward our jamming sources. Others are retreating to defensive positions. Perfect, Chen replied. Confused enemies make mistakes. Signal the frigates to begin rescue operations on the outer facilities. Commander David Park received the signal aboard the UN Raptor and immediately led his squadron of frigates toward the containment facilities orbiting Kepler orbits. The smaller, faster ships used the chaos in the Krek's fleet to slip past their defensive perimeter. What they found in the containment facilities would haunt the crews forever. Thousands of humans were crammed into biomechanical pods, kept alive but sedated while machines harvested their labor and biological resources. Many had been there for weeks, slowly wasting away as the Krek's literally consumed their life force. This is Commander Park to all rescue teams, he broadcast. Priority Alpha on all extractions. Get our people out of there, whatever it takes. The rescue operations began immediately, but they weren't unopposed. Several Krek's Guardian ships, smaller vessels designed to protect the harvesting operations, moved to intercept the human frigates. What they encountered was unlike anything in their collective experience. The human ships didn't engage in direct combat. Instead, they used the asteroid field like a three-dimensional maze, appearing from behind cover to launch precise strikes before disappearing again. The UN Raptor would emerge from one asteroid cluster, fire a spread of missiles, then vanish behind another cluster while the Krek's ships tried to pursue. It's like fighting ghosts, Commander Park muttered as he watched 3 Krek's vessels chase shadows while his teams continued the evacuation. Meanwhile, the heavier human ships executed their own part of the plan. The destroyers, led by the UN Hammer, used a tactic that Dr. Vasquez had developed based on her analysis of Krek's biotechnology. Instead of trying to destroy the massive alien vessels, They targeted specific biomechanical nodes that controlled the ship's vital functions. Captain Martinez watched her tactical display as her weapons officer prepared another strike. Target the neural cluster on the command vessel. If Dr. Vasquez is right, hitting that should paralyze their entire ship. The quantum torpedoes struck with pinpoint accuracy, and the result exceeded their expectations. The massive Krex command ship, larger than 2 human destroyers combined, suddenly went dark. Its biomechanical systems shut down as the neural cluster that controlled them was severed. Direct hit, the weapons officer reported. The target is dead in space. But the most devastating part of humanity's strategy wasn't the tactical brilliance or technological adaptation. It was psychological warfare on a scale the Krex had never experienced. Dr. Vasquez had discovered that the Krex collective consciousness made them particularly vulnerable to coordinated misinformation. Using captured communication frequencies, the human fleet began broadcasting false signals that made their small force appear much larger than it actually was. "Admiral," Dr. Vasquez reported, "I'm detecting panic responses from multiple Krex vessels. Their communications indicate they believe they're facing a fleet of over 200 ships." Chen allowed herself a slight smile. The beauty of fighting a hive mind is that when you confuse one part, you confuse the whole. The Krex, who had conquered 40 star systems through overwhelming force and coordinated attacks, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to play by established rules. Human ships appeared and disappeared like phantoms. Their communications were jammed, their coordination disrupted, and their psychological advantage of overwhelming numbers turned against them as they began to believe they were vastly outnumbered. But the most crucial part of the operation was still underway. The rescue teams, led by Commander Park's frigates, had managed to evacuate nearly 10,000 humans from the containment facilities. But there were still hundreds of thousands more trapped in the deeper mining operations on the planet's surface. "Admiral," Torres reported, "the frigates are requesting support for ground operations. The Krex have significant defensive positions around the main mining complexes." Chen studied the tactical display. The space battle was going better than expected, but a ground assault would be suicide with their limited numbers. That's when she made the decision that would define humanity's reputation throughout the galaxy. "Signal all ships. We're not just rescuing our people, we're taking the entire system." The plan was audacious beyond reason. Using the asteroid field as cover, the human fleet would coordinate simultaneous strikes on every major Krex installation in the system. Not to destroy them, but to capture them intact and turn the Krex's own technology against them. Dr. Vasquez had discovered that Krex biotechnology could be reprogrammed if you understood the correct neural frequencies. It was risky and untested, but it offered the possibility of turning the enemy's greatest strength into humanity's advantage. The operation began with the UN Defiance leading a coordinated assault on the main Krex command station orbiting Kepler-3. Instead of destroying the massive biomechanical structure, human boarding teams led by Captain Torres fought their way to the neural control centers. "Remember," Torres told his Marines as they prepared to board the alien station, "we're not here to destroy. We're here to reprogram. Dr. Vasquez's frequency modulators should allow us to take control of their systems." The boarding action was unlike anything in human military history. Fighting through corridors that seemed more like living tissue than metal hallways, human Marines battled Krex defenders while carrying delicate scientific equipment needed to hack into alien biotechnology. When they finally reached the central neural chamber, Dr. Vasquez's theory was put to the ultimate test. Using modified human communication equipment, the boarding team began transmitting override frequencies directly into the Krex command network. The effect was immediate and stunning. Throughout the system, Krex vessels and installations began responding to human commands. Biomechanical harvesting equipment stopped consuming human life force and began releasing prisoners. Defensive systems that had protected Krex operations for weeks suddenly turned their weapons on their former masters. "Admiral," Dr. Vasquez reported with amazement in her voice, "we have control of 60% of their fleet. The Krex biotechnology is responding to our neural commands. But the most significant moment came when the remaining free Krex ships, realizing they had lost both tactical and technological superiority, attempted to flee the system. Admiral Chen made the decision that would echo throughout galactic history. All ships pursue and disable. No Krex vessel leaves this system. The chase that followed demonstrated everything that made humanity unique among galactic species. Using captured Krex ships alongside their own vessels, the human fleet pursued the fleeing aliens through the asteroid field with relentless determination. The final Krex command vessel, desperate to escape, attempted to break through the outer system defenses. What it encountered was the UN Defiance, positioned perfectly in its escape route. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Navy. She broadcast on all frequencies. You came to our system believing humans were just another species to be conquered and enslaved. Today you've learned that humanity doesn't surrender, doesn't submit, and doesn't forgive those who threaten our people. The Krex vessel, damaged and surrounded, finally surrendered, the first time in their species' history they had ever yielded to another race. In the hours that followed, human rescue teams liberated nearly 500,000 colonists from Krex containment facilities. Medical teams worked around the clock to treat those who had been subjected to alien biotechnology, while engineers began the process of dismantling the harvesting operations. But perhaps most importantly, word of humanity's victory began spreading throughout the galaxy. The species that had conquered 40 star systems had been defeated by a small human fleet using tactics and strategies that no other race had ever attempted. Commander Park, exhausted after coordinating rescue operations for 18 straight hours, found Admiral Chen in the observation deck of the Defiance. She was looking out at the recovered colonies, watching as human ships restored life and freedom to the Kepler system. "Admiral," he said quietly, "intelligence reports are coming in from across the galaxy. The Krex Empire is in chaos. Other subject species are beginning to rebel, and several major Krex fleets are retreating to defensive positions." Chen nodded but didn't turn away from the view. "Good. Maybe other species will realize that bullies can be beaten if you're willing to fight smart instead of fighting fair." "What happens now?" Park asked. Chen finally turned to face him, and he saw something new in her expression, not just the satisfaction of victory, but the weight of responsibility that came with it. "Now we make sure the galaxy knows that humanity is no longer hiding in the outer rim. We're here, we're not going away, and we'll fight for anyone who's willing to stand up against oppression." The Vanguard Protocol had been more than a military operation. It had been humanity's announcement to the galaxy that Earth's children were ready to take their place among the stars. Not as conquerors like the Krex, but as protectors of freedom and justice. As the human fleet prepared to escort the rescued colonists back to safety, Admiral Chen sent a message that would be broadcast throughout human space and beyond. "Today, humanity proved that we don't need to be the biggest or the strongest to win. We just need to be smarter, braver, and more determined than those who would harm innocent people. The galaxy is vast and full of dangers, but it's also full of hope. And wherever that hope is threatened, humanity will be there to defend it." The Krex Empire would never recover from their defeat at Kepler. Within months, their conquests began crumbling as subject species followed humanity's example and fought back against their oppressors. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the smallest force, fighting with the greatest heart, could overcome impossible odds. And in the years that followed, when other species faced seemingly insurmountable challenges, they would remember the story of Admiral Sarah Chen and the Vanguard Protocol, proof that courage, ingenuity, and determination could triumph over any enemy, no matter how powerful they seemed.